Evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 to order. We will begin with the singing of the national anthem, and I would call on Councillor Papp to lead us, all who are able to rise.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our vast command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved that the agenda for the September 4th, 2018 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any amendments to the agenda, changes of order? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest that any members of council may have. Do any members have any conflicts?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Can that be so noted? I have none either. We have a couple of presentations this evening, delegations, and the first is by representatives of the Meridian Community Center Oversight Committee. Mr. Gibson is here. Thank you for joining us. And you have a very exciting presentation for us this evening.
I did start using a computer until I was 55, sir, so I do need some assistance.
Okay, that's perfect. And perhaps Ms. Wilford could...
F5, Holly. F5, thank you.
I'll have to tell you.
That's not going to work. Can you adjust the lights too? We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
You gotta see me on skates.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilford, if you could adjust the lights, just to dim that one light a little bit so people can see in the audience. Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Well, thank you, staff. That's quite the introduction, Mr. Gibson. How are you this evening?
I electronically, I'm a disaster, but physically I'm here, and I would like to report some good news to council. And thank you, Mr. Chair and council, for letting us speak to this matter. As you're aware, the Oversight Committee has been working away for the last couple of years, and to make sure that the community center is brought in to reasonable expectations. I'm going to thank the people to start with that were on the committee. Mrs. Gibson, thank you very much for I tell you, she spent as much time listening to me. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Bill Sheldon. With Bill, you're either learning or laughing. Okay, there's no in between, and Mr. Sheldon can make his point very vividly, and he makes Rick Mercer's rants look a little tame in comparison. Okay. Mr. Kersey, thank you very much for inviting us and proposing this idea to council. You know what our concerns were at the beginning, was to make sure this thing worked really well, and thank you very much for bringing this forward. Darren, thank you very much for doing the contract management with both of the architect and the constructor. Very beneficial, and I've learned a lot about public administration through you. Thank you very much. Ms. Quinlan came into this partway through, and her biggest contribution financially was very well received, but she was very good. Mr. Sheldon and I are somewhat a little, we don't like small text, and she developed 12-point text that we could actually read financial reports. Thank you very much. Ms. Prezzato, thank you for keeping me in order. I'm not the most rigorous person, and thank you very much for the minutes and everything else. Ms. Holland, thank you very much. I don't think you realize that Kim put in double time. She would go and meet with the ball construction and then come over and talk to us at the same time. And would you thank Joel on our behalf, okay? Our biggest partner was, of course, Ball Construction. And the whole team, our mandate was to basically bring the project in on time and under budget. And I think we reported on June the 4th that we were on time as planned. And the Oversight Committee in that meeting said we'd be back in September to report to your council the final cost of the project. And my assistant here is...
Wow.
So,
Hey, all right.
with a little editing here, we're going to, with my friends, we're going to tell you how much we're under budget.
Bit of animation up there. Wow.
Budget was $36,204,000.
Thanks to everybody involved. Thank you.
So we were $705,949 under budget. And let me assure you that if it wasn't for Ball Construction, we would not be in this position. They are an exceptional company to work with. We asked them to attend the meeting tonight. Unfortunately, they couldn't. Bill and I have been in the construction business for way too long, and we have never met two more dedicated people than Bob Nappel and Ian, and Doug was the site manager, and as Bill used to say, he's, and Gary, sorry to use your first names, but hey, he's one of the old-time construction people. Bob this was his last project before he retired. And Doug has one more project left in him, and he's going to build a casino up in Sudbury, and then he's retiring. But this is his last arena, so there was a little more into this than that. So in summary, I think we were on time, and I think we were on budget, and we achieved that through Ball Construction. And I guess we're hanging up our on time and on budget stamps. And I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity of doing this. It's been a great pleasure. I've learned a lot from it, and it's nice to be able to contribute to the community by doing this, and kind of pays back for having a great community. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well,
Mr.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Gibson, Mr. Sheldon, and Councillor Kersey, especially along with staff. One of the concerns of the community when we approved the project back in the spring of 2016 was that it would be over budget, that it would be not on time. And so to deal with that, it was the idea to have an oversight committee and work with Ball Construction on that. And basically, it's unheard of to have a project, especially of this size. Some of those smaller projects, sometimes they're under, and you get good pricing for a few things. But a project like this, it's unheard of for it to be delivered on time and under budget. So kudos to every member of the committee, to the staff, to Ball Construction, to the architect that was also involved in that, Petrov. It's absolutely outstanding. So we should be giving you the highest honor and keys to the facility and all that stuff. But you know where all the nooks and crannies are on your tours, of the facility. But just great work. So thank you very much on behalf of council. I don't know if members of council have any questions or other comments. I'll open it up for councillors. But absolutely great work, outstanding work. Thank you very much. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I led the standing ovation. Terrific job. What I would like to see is some consideration addressing the staff to have a plaque made up to say the oversight committee that was so beneficial in the construction of this and everything going on, so it can be displayed in a prominent place, because these people deserve all of the credit that we can give them and more. So it's just fantastic. And you know me, I love to celebrate success, and we have no better success than this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Pat?
Well, to pick up on Councillor Durley, I spent 35 years in the senior government section of municipal government, building projects, sometimes of this size, sometimes smaller. It is rare, if not, I can tell you that I lost all my hair doing this, because we'd have overruns, we'd have everything you could think of, and it was always the worst expectations. I must say, I'm thoroughly astounded and so pleased that what you were able to accomplish with such a major, the most historic project in the history of the municipality. And to be able to do this with a group of volunteers, with our staff, and especially, I know a little bit about Ball Construction, I think kudos to you, and I would say, Councillor Durley, not just a small plaque. I want your pictures and a plaque put up there so everybody can remember what you did, because as the years go on, and the legacy continues, I think everybody will look back and say this was one of the few, if not, well, I'd say few, public sector projects that met its objectives, both construction, financial, and community needs. Thank you.
Here. Any others? Councillor Kersey, as a member of the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two comments. Firstly, Chair Bill has complimented everybody on the committee except himself, because he's a humble guy and his arms are too short to pat himself on the back, so I'll pat him on the back for it.
Perfect.
He did a great job when Sheldon and Kersey were shooting off our mouth irrationally at the meetings. He would pull us in and calm us down, and we'd enter into a rational discussion. So he brought to the table his expertise in procurement and his expertise in construction, and I appreciated his leadership. So, Chair Bill, thank you.
Here.
The other thing, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to bring to everyone's attention, not only did this project come in on time and under budget, it flowed in excess of $10 million back into the economy of Niagara and provided jobs in construction. A significant number of the contractors that were on site were Niagara talent. And one of the things that kept coming back to the committee was comments from Ball Construction saying how blown away they were by the talent that we have in Niagara within our construction sector. So I think it's kudos to our community for sponsoring a project like this that put in excess of $10 million back into the economy of Niagara and supported the trades of Niagara. So for that, I'm very proud, and I think our community should be proud of that as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Councillor Ribbiak, I think you signaled as well.
I did, and I just wanted to comment on how how great an accomplishment this is. Built a few things in my time, worked in industry for a long time, and anything coming in on time and on budget is usually a miracle. I haven't had nearly as much experience in the civic sector, but from judging from experiences even within the Niagara Peninsula, this is obviously very, very different. And I give full credit to the execution of this thing. I'm also reminded, and I know you won't mind me saying this, that you were handed a good vision and a good plan. And I think that some of the credit ought to go to ADAC, for example, the architects. I know that very early on, 4 years ago, was it? That long ago, we fought. How big should it be? What should go into it? Should there be a pool? Should there not be a pool? Should there be a second pad? Should there not be a second pad? I mean, all of that was fought out in advance, so that when the project could get started, it was clear what the objective was. And I think that being handed a clear objective must have been a tremendous relief to the oversight committee to know that what they were shooting for. If you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter how you get there, right? But I think this committee knew where it was going, and it was a long road. It was a good road. It started right, finished even better. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councillor, and thanks for pointing out the work of the Architectural Design Advisory Committee, that representatives of the users that would be using this and representatives of the community, and also ensuring that the accessibility was met as well and surpassed. So thank you very much. Councillor King.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's an expression, it takes a village to raise a child. It has taken this entire municipality to raise this amazing, amazing center in our town. And it's taken a lot of work and effort from the Oversight Committee, the staff, construction, and so on and so forth. And as we all know, we've taken a lot of ridicule over this project, but I think the bottom line is that the community center that stands there today is the effort of this whole town. So kudos to everyone who has been involved in raising this child. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. Any other councillors? Councillor
I
Lane?
guess I would be remiss by not saying something. As a supporter and of the junior hockey team that's in town, certainly I appreciate the new facility and the much pleasure that I'm going to get out of attending it just on the basis of hockey, never mind all the other functions that are going to go on at the community center. And I think it's a huge bonus for the town. And I think the people and the naysayers and that will soon learn to embrace it and enjoy it and love it. And congratulations again to all involved who did such a wonderful job to bring it in on time and on budget. It's a beautiful building, and I think we should be very proud here in Pelham of this facility. So kudos again.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Lane. That your comments remind me of that tagline that really Mr. Stazer said, Wade Stazer said with Meridian Credit Union when we announced their $1 million pledge to the community center. And they said, this is the place for moments that matter. And it's a tagline that's sort of picked up. And so, Councillor Lane, you talk about the moments that matter for you, watching the junior Bs and getting together with the community, et cetera. So absolutely, this facility will be that place and is that place starting to form now. They're having tryouts for hockey. They're, the ice is in both pads, basketball starting this week, et cetera. And we've had a number of events in there like lacrosse. So thank you very much for those words. And again, congratulations. I'm with Councillor Papp in terms of, and Durley as well, and others. What can we do to celebrate you and acknowledge you? So we will definitely be doing something appropriate. But we definitely appreciate you sharing your talents, your expertise with the community to ensure that this was built on time and under budget, and as well the staff and the professionals that we relied on. They put their heart and soul into this. You talked about Doug with Ball Construction. Sometimes he was gruff, but he got the job done, and his heart was always in the right place, and he was always looking out for the best interests of the community and of the community center. So I think we should give them another round of applause for your work. Thank you so much. Thank you. So it has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved, the delegation by Bill Gibson on behalf of the Meridian Community Center Oversight Committee regarding their final presentation be received for information. And I think with this, obviously, staff have taken it upon themselves to make this banner. There's so much excitement about the project. So I hope we also spread the word that way. I'm going to call the question unless there's any other councillors. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you so much for your hard work, dedication, and we will be recognizing you in coming days. So thank you. Now, I don't know how anybody can follow up on that. We have pop-up banners and we have all kinds of things, but we have Kirk Weaver, the CEO of the library here, along with members of the library board. So, Mr. Weaver, if you'd like to come up and make a presentation.
Tim, the chair, too.
Tim Wright is the chair of the board. He's here, and other board members.
And I'd also like to take the opportunity to introduce Alyssa Murray, who's along from the board. She is current vice chair, and Joe Bouchard, who is the former vice chair up until this year. Mayor Dave, councillors, staff, and guests, we appreciate the opportunity to appear here this evening. Unusually, I'm not here to ask for anything. I think almost all the time I've been here, I have had a little ask associated with what I have to say, but not tonight, except maybe in a general way. Also, I'd like, well, I guess I have to say, unfortunately, I'm not bringing news that was like that was just presented to you. So I know, as Mayor Dave just said, it's a tough act to follow, but hopefully we have a message that is important and will resonate with you. What we're hoping to do tonight is provide an update for the library activities over the last 3 3/4 years. As yourselves, we, as board members, have a 4-year term, and we have been working collectively with the CEO and library staff to develop the library, to have the library continue to provide excellent and well acknowledged service in the community. And we just want to review our efforts. We think, as I go through it, one of the themes will be partnerships and cooperation. We believe strongly that much more is accomplished through those types of approaches than working on your own. And to us, there's no more important partnership than the partnership we have with the town to ensure that the town gets the library services that it deserves. One topic this evening is our 2017 annual report. Everyone has hopefully received a copy of that. 2017 ended 9 months ago or 8 months ago, but there were several very important accomplishments in that time, and we wanted you all to have copies of the annual report, what we think is a dynamic annual report to help represent the dynamic things that have been going on within the library. In addition to the annual report, tonight we want to have a bit of a review, not only of 2017, but also the full term of our board and how we think we've helped the library progress and what the contribution of the library has been for the town. So those are the topics that I'll be covering. First of all, I will start off with the mission and strategic directions for the library. These are elements that have been developed during our term. We think they're very important. They have helped guide us in our discussions. It's always much easier to see your direction, to make your decisions, when you can refer back to something that gives you, helps you with that direction. We have on our overhead the mission of the library to engage, encourage, and enrich our community. So as we talk about things, we can always refer back to those words, and makes our task easier. There's one slide missing that I have that isn't in the deck. The other elements, in addition to the mission, are the themes for our strategic plan, which was developed by the board late 2016, adopted in early 2017. The themes of our strategic plan are engagement. We want to be active participants in our community. We want enrichment in the community. We want growth and learning opportunities for residents. We believe in financial sustainability. We are financially prudent with our community investments. Next theme is facility improvement. We need facilities that meet changing community need, and we strive to reach those. And we believe in workplace development. So we invest in our people to ensure a high level of service. Again, directions that are very helpful to us in our work. 2017. The highlight of last year was clearly the reopening of the renovated and expanded Maple Acre branch. This community response has been, the community response has been fantastic. More than 26,000 visitors came through the doors of that branch, far exceeding pre-construction numbers. A broader demographic is using the library, with many more young families and after-school users, encouraging in terms of seeing that part of Pelham develop and grow. The improved spaces allowed us to offer a greater range of programming, increased room rental opportunities, going along with our themes to be more than the traditional library of having reading materials available for reading and for distribution, but also a place where the community can come meet and discuss and carry on together. And Maple Acre has met those directions outstandingly. Another highlight from 2017 is that use of both libraries in total has increased by 10%. So to us, that's a message from our community that we're doing the things they want, doing the things they need, and helps guide us in the future as to the directions that we might wish to follow. Very importantly, we also launched a reciprocal borrowing arrangement that allows Pelham residents to access the materials of 5 other local libraries with their Pelham Public Library card. The program is short-termed as LINK, which is Libraries in Niagara Cooperative. The response to that has been outstanding. It's extremely heavily used, and good feedback from people that if things aren't available either in Pelham now or in the near future, they can quite quickly get the resources they're looking for from another library, one of the other 5 libraries in Niagara, and it has worked very, very well. It's been a very successful element of 2017. We've also improved our technology services through the purchase of additional hardware. We've improved our Wi-Fi capacity and launched a new website with online booking and payment options, which again are highly used by our clientele and are fitting in with the directions in society and keeping us current with things that are going on. As I said earlier, we believe it's important that what we do is in concert with other things that are going on within the community, and as a result we have tried to align what we do with other entities, the council and the town included. We view ourselves as an important component of the overall suite of public services offered within the town. With that in mind, the board does seek to align our strategic objectives in a way that supports the achievement of the town's stated objectives. We are also taking steps to make our space more open and comfortable for the community to use, which is consistent with objectives in the provincial community hub strategy. And that's what I referred to just a few minutes ago in terms of libraries are expanding out beyond their traditional role. They're very important components of all dynamic communities. It's a place where people can get together, where they can communicate, where they can get educated. A lot of very positive things to add to the community, and we're very proud of that part of our role. Looking back over our whole term of almost 4 years, there's many other things that we're proud of. First of all, we completed the memorandum of understanding with the town that helped clarify our roles and responsibilities. More importantly, we feel that we've established a strong spirit of collaboration between the board and council and the staff. There is a clear recognition that we both seek the common objective of providing the best possible services to Pelham residents. We have found it, for the most part, very easy working with the town, understanding what your objectives are, what your limitations are, but also getting that type of response back as to understanding our problems, what we're trying to achieve, and we feel that type of relationship and collaboration is working very, very well for us. We've remained committed throughout the 4 years to financial sustainability. There's never seems to be enough money, but I think we do quite well with that which we have. As I say, we've had a number of successes we're proud of. That doesn't mean that we'll stop coming and asking, because there are other great things that we see for the library and for the community. But we will hold true to the principle that what we do has to be financially sustainable for the library and for the town and for the citizens of the community. With the support of the town and the Pelham Art Festival over the 4 years, we've improved our facilities, from the expansion of Maple Acre to replacement of old and worn furnishings and equipment. This capital investment has allowed us to effectively transition from the traditional lender of materials to a more of a common gathering place, which I've alluded to as well. Also this term, the board established a new strategic plan and implemented measures to ensure it is regularly reviewed, monitored, and progress tracked. We feel it's important to be accountable to the community, and those are our mechanisms for making sure that we make known what we're trying to do and that we examine it, get data on it, and are moving in those directions. Overall, we feel this term has been characterized by a desire to engage and enrich the community we serve. Looking ahead, the work of the board this term has laid a solid foundation for what lies before the next term of the board and council. This includes planned improvements in Fonthill to make better use of the main floor space for the public in order to support the growth expected as a result of the East Fonthill development. When we think about our concerns, this is definitely one of our major concerns. We have a facility we're proud of. The community likes using it. They come and use it, but as we all know, the community is growing, which is very positive for the community. But the reality is, if we're all able to continue growing, it has to be done through cooperation with facilities and recognition that everyone will have joint needs and joint requirements from that, and that there'll be understanding as those things need to develop. So certainly the library in Fonthill is going to be one of our major concerns and one of our major priorities. The board has also begun to shift focus from a period of looking after the needs of existing users to putting some effort into identifying the needs of potential users and working out how to meet those needs. We're exploring partnerships with Brock University and Niagara College to determine how to assess that. We haven't got our system together, but we feel it's important that the library is there to meet the needs of all citizens of Pelham. When we look at our statistics, we're doing it well for many of our residents, but quite clearly not all residents of Pelham are using our services. We want to find out why. Is it we're not offering the right things, or we're not offering them in the way they want? Do they have different types of needs? We want to get that sort of information, so as we develop in the future, we can be cognizant of the fact that we represent services for the whole community and not just a segment of the community. So that's one of our priorities currently in this year and certainly will be in the coming year. And we'll also continue to balance resource pressures that come with meeting the needs of a growing community with a healthy respect for taxpayer affordability. So that covers the topics we wanted to bring to your attention. In the past, I think we've spoken more specifically about some of these needs and requirements, and in future we probably, well, not probably, we will be speaking in detail about those things as the processes proceed through the current year and into next year. We see a lot of positive things that we'd like to see happen. We have seen a lot of positive things from the past, and we feel the past has helped us establish a good representation for moving into the future, and we look forward to doing that. And thank you for your attention this evening, and hopefully we can continue this type of dialogue. We feel it's very important that we can project what we're doing and that others can understand what we're doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wright, for your presentation and for the board members that are here and all members of the board, staff as well. You talk about dialogue. It is very good. You keep coming to council every year and talking about the library and what's required, et cetera. And I think if I reflect back years ago, that may not have been the case. So thank you very much for continuing that dialogue and continuing to show us how important the library is to the community and how important it, and highlighting it as well for council. So thank you. I wonder if councillors have any questions for Mr. Wright or for Mr. Weaver? Councillor Papp?
I just wanted to thank you again for the report, and it's a very good news story. And as the mayor was mentioning, I remember the times we went through discussing the future and fate of the Maple Acres Library. And here we are a year later, and things have worked out very well. So congratulations, and we look forward to continuing to grow in those areas that affect not only library service, but general community services offered by the library. So to the staff and the board, congratulations.
Okay, thank you. Any others? I have a couple of, I have a question. There's reference in your annual report to the John Howard Society. That's not necessarily in your presentation. Can you just let us know how that's working out, what you're doing with the John Howard Society? They're using some of your space, is that correct?
Kirk, he knows the details much better than I, so I will let him speak.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Through the mayor, we had a partnership with the Welland Public Library and the John Howard Society of Niagara. We applied for a grant through the Niagara Prosperity Initiative, and as part of that, we had part-time a social worker or that kind of a background in the library, a few hours a week. Welland had a few hours a week. And she also delivered some programming through the John Howard Society of Niagara. The intent for us was to bring awareness of social services into the library for both staff and the public. So she had a desk in the library several hours a week and was available for support or providing people with access, good information on how to access services if they need it.
Great.
We find our staff from time to time find they can see behaviors exhibited in people that come in through the library that may indicate they need some help. People aren't always aware of where to get that help from.
Right.
So from the public side of things is a way to create awareness and better access to services available to them. From a staff perspective, she was able to create some checklists and documents that our staff can use so that when she's not on site, our staff are prepared with information if questions arise or if there's a need that comes up from that. The grant is now over. We did try to reapply for a second year. We weren't successful, so that program hasn't continued. We're still in conversation with the John Howard Society on how we can move something forward in the future in partnership with other libraries. It started with ourselves in Welland, but others were interested in participating as well. So it's back to the drawing board and how we're going to fund it, but it was a successful project.
It sounds great, a great program, and you're always thinking outside the box and trying to get ahead of things as you see an issue come up. You're always looking for and saying, well, here's something that we can do to solve that. Also, no mention of the I forget what it's called. I guess I'll call it the Rotary Nook in the new Meridian Community Center. I don't know if somebody wants to comment on that quickly. The Rotary book display.
Yeah, certainly through the mayor, the it's not mentioned because we're focusing on 2017 annual report, and this happened in 2018. So we'll report on that in 2018's presentation. But just briefly, and we're pleased to be part of a partnership with the Rotary Club to have the Rotary Reading House, which is a play area for young kids who may be waiting with their parents while siblings or relatives are participating in other events at the community center. So the Rotary Club and ourselves provided funding to purchase the materials and the equipment that are in that area. The town provided us with a high-profile space to allow that to happen. And we've recently opened it up, and as part of I've seen it in use, and we're hoping that it'll be well used, and if, at some point we may need to replace some of the materials, but that's the idea, was to create a place for the community, create awareness for both the Rotary Club and the library. Down the road, we may have further discussions with the town on, through their service kiosks, maybe we can issue cards. That takes a bit of a technical effort,
yeah.
but that's something we're talking about in the future. We want to start with something small and see how it goes.
Good, yeah, book drop-off, pickups, those kind of things perhaps, or at least would come to my mind, so that's great. Thank you very much, we appreciate it, and kudos to you for, again, you talk about Maple Acre starting and the number of new clients or new patrons that are using the library. It's a great number, and the number of visits that are up, and there was always that concern, as Councillor Papp identified, that when that library was open, would it be used? And it's just great to hear that the community has embraced it, so thank you very much. Unless there's anything further, I'm going to call the question, and the motion is that moved by King, second by Lane, be it resolved that the delegation by Kirk Weaver and Tim Wright on behalf of the town of Pelham Public Library Board regarding the 2017-2018 annual report be received for information. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
For being here, as well, other board members. So thank you. Thanks for your diligence and work. You will be back. Thank you. We look forward to that. Thank you so much. Now we move to adoption of minutes. It's been moved by, thanks very much. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Council minutes of our meeting of August 13th, special council minutes of July 25th, and special council minutes of August 13th, 2018. Are there any errors or omissions in any of those minutes? No. There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we move to consent agenda items to be considered in block. That means that items would traditionally be considered all together, but councillors can lift items for separate consideration. Would councillors like to lift any items for separate consideration? Councillor Papp?
Just two items, and I'll be very quick. 9.5.3 and 9.5.4.
Okay, thank you. Similar motions, so thank you.
Yeah.
Any others? Thank you. It's been moved by, I'm going to say Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved that the following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. Information correspondence items. City of Welland, and that we're receiving that correspondence that they are supporting resolution regarding tariffs on steel and aluminum. Under 952, there's also a resolution regarding the enforcement of cannabis from the City of Welland, and they are supporting our resolution regarding the enforcement of medical cannabis. 953 and 954 have been lifted. So now we move to 955, Niagara Region Report, PSD 29, 2018, comments on the province's draft agricultural impact assessment guidance document. 956, Township of North Frontenac, request to support and advocate for provincial funding for volunteer firefighters certification. And 957, the Town of Aurora, letter to Premier Doug Ford regarding the Greenbelt protection, and those are to be received. Any questions or comments on any of those items? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Councillor Papp, you lifted 953 and 954. They were moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey, to be received. And you have an amendment to that, sir.
I would just ask that we also support these resolutions, and I'll be very brief. Anybody who's been watching the NAFTA negotiations has to be deeply, deeply concerned about the responses that we've been, and I've publicly stated, not happy at all with the president and his reflections on how he treats our country. I think, let alone the treatment, if these negotiations don't go as favorably as we think, or we end up in some agreement that's not to our benefit, then I think we're in deep trouble. We need to stand up, and I think this is part of that with the AMO's resolutions, that we as municipalities across here and across Canada want to ensure that we, if in fact come up with whatever it's called, an NAFTA or North American, whatever the heck it's called, that this agreement be for the ultimate benefit for our local community and for the country itself. That's basically in a nutshell. I'll just ask. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. And is there a seconder to Councillor Papp? Councillor Durley? Anyone else to that, to support? Pleased to see that over the weekend and the start of this week that there's been some support for Canada in the United States.
Yes.
There's kind of some backlash to the comments, that perhaps some might call them reckless comments from the administration there about Canada. So very pleased to see that there's an internal folks are internal to the United States are saying, wait a minute, you can't just leave Canada. They're such a huge trade partner for us. So I believe it's an amendment. Is it an amendment? So I'm going to call a question on the amendment to support these, to receive them and support. So the amendment is to support. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment carries. And now to the main motion as amended. Anyone else? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries as amended, so that we will receive them and support and endorse. Thank you very much. Now we move to reports. First report is reports from members of council. I have a very lengthy report that's on council, and that's because I hadn't reported, I don't think, to council specifically until since June. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of these items. Very pleased to raise the flag for Pride, and that occurred at one of our council meetings there on the 4th of June, 2018. Thanks very much to Pride Niagara for assisting us with that and helping to celebrate across Niagara the importance of working toward an inclusive community. Very pleased to offer best wishes to the newly elected MPPs in Niagara on the election in early June. I tried to get to all of the parties as well. It was a long night, but congratulations to each of them. Very pleased. There's a couple of business openings here. One of them was Studio W Salon, which is just over here in the former LCBO, a beautifully redone facility. And also to Dr. Bouchard for that, and that was later in July for their and family for their opening of their new facility here. A real thrill is going to some of these Love My Hood parties. I went to one on the weekend as well at Abbott Place. There was one in June at Victory Garden, and it was quite energetic. And you can see how that community gets together. So it's very good that I think those numbers are double. And some folks have talked to me when they see them on social media. How can I be part of that? How can our community be part of that? Which is great. So we hope that continues. Thanks to those that painted the tops of the picnic tables. That sort of came about at one of the supper markets where we had an idea, and thanks to staff and a little bit of dollars from the Mayor's Gala, we were able to get that active and going. So thanks very much to Monique for leading that. Thank you. Grand opening for Can Trust, very large employer in town, medical marijuana facility, 250,000 square feet medical cannabis facility at the corner of Belfort and Regional Road 20. 200 jobs now, and they're expanding. So congratulations to them. Obviously, there's other reports in here about Summerfest, which we have a report later on at committee. I talked earlier about the lacrosse tournament at the Meridian Community Center. It was the first tournament, the first activity that was held in that center, and that was starting on the 20th of July, and I had the honor of dropping the ball for these little lacrosse players. Somebody took a picture of them on the bench, and all you could see was the top of their helmets. So it was just a great to see them enjoying the new Meridian Community Center. Kudos to the those that were involved in the Tour de Lac, which was a fundraiser, a bike tour around Lake Ontario, and they ended at the Wellspring, the new Wellspring Center at Wellspring Way and Meridian Way, and the Lions and the Rotary came together for a wonderful celebration barbecue. So congratulations to each of those riders and for their support of the Wellspring. Fawn Hill Lions were busy as well because they had Slider Fest. And I believe all of council was there at that Slider Fest on the 25th of August, a great event. And it was also great to announce the pool acknowledgement of the funding that we received from the federal government, and to see those kids ready to get in the pool. We kind of had to hold them back with the ribbon, but they certainly wanted to get into that pool and use it. And I'm very pleased to thank Vance Badaway, MPP, and the federal government for the support that we received to help rehabilitate the pool at Marlene Stewart Street Park, the decking around the pool, and also stopping any leaks that were there, and a chair that is in the water to make it fully accessible. So that, coupled with the fact that we received money from the federal and provincial government a few years ago to redo the pool house, makes that facility a top-notch facility. So we're very pleased about that as well. Final report. This will be a little bit long, and I'm going to ask colleagues perhaps that were there to comment if they so choose. But very pleased that to join Councillor Kersey and Councillor Papp and our CAO at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference. It's an annual 3-day conference offering a range of activities and opportunities to lobby and to learn and to network. It was held again in Ottawa this year, 1,500 delegates. We did meet with various ministries on behalf of the town, on behalf of the community. The first was meeting with Jeff Urick, MPP, Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, and Toby Barrett, MPP and Parliamentary Assistant for that ministry. And Mr. Barrett is just right over here in Haldeman. So when we were talking to him about the Fawn Hill Came, they knew exactly where it was and the importance in our community. Essentially, we've been saying continue the protections of the Fawn Hill Came that the previous government put on when they did the study of the area of natural and scientific interest, and very, very delighted that the minister indicated that the government would not be changing that. He said we have no need to change that. So that was great news for the community. And we did indicate that we are looking forward to working with them, perhaps to get some further safeguards. One idea is to do that through the Niagara Escarpment Commission. So that's something that's sort of on the docket to do to protect that. We also met with the Honourable Steve Clark, MPP, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, about provincial funding. We encourage the government to fund projects that help create wealth and prosperity in communities. We spoke about projects like downtown revitalization, but also about community and cultural facilities like community centers and the presentation we just had about libraries. We discourage the government from investing in projects that might create more sprawl, like urban boundary expansions or smart centers disconnected from the community. Ministry staff, it was very interesting, and I think the CAO was commented on this afterwards, but they were nodding their heads in that they recognize that as provincial dollars get kind of more dear, that it makes sense to fund projects that have the biggest bang for the buck for community. And they knew about the different areas, individuals and studies, the Congress of New Urbanism, etc. And I think the follow-up on that is to touch base with them, and the CAO has their cards and will be following up with them, I understood as well. The minister also informed us about, as he spoke about some of the focuses for the ministry. He spoke at the conference about this, and he also talked to us about it. Consistent with the message earlier in the conference when he focused on working with local governments. And the focus of this government is to work with municipalities to cut red tape, to increase the housing supply, to reduce unnecessary reporting, that's reporting from municipalities to the province, strengthening regional governments, and finding efficiencies. When he talked about the strengthening of regional governments, he did indicate to us in our gathering with him, our audience with him, that he said, you know, there won't be anything sort of early fall this election, but after that, he looked forward to feedback from communities about how the regional system is working. We did indicate that I did ask him if the previous government said that we had to review next term, and he said yes, that we'll continue with that. So that topic, that will be a topic to discuss next term, sort of the who does what in the region and what it would look like. We also listened to the three party leaders, and the Premier thankfully acknowledged that cities and towns are closest to the people. He did state that the government had no plans for Toronto-style election reform in other cities in the near future. He also indicated and told us that a new day has dawned in Ontario. Obviously, it included many educational sessions and panel discussions, and I was able to attend some of those. I especially appreciate the panel on the long-term care campus style that we've done in our town, and other communities are talking about that. They do it maybe a bit differently. So there's some opportunities there for us to look at those, to look at the long-term care facilities that we have coming, the retirement home, the doctor's offices, the seniors apartment, et cetera, and other communities are doing that too. Also attended a session on with representation from Petrolia, Sioux Lookout, and East Gwillimbury on ways of working with neighboring communities to combine services to residents and businesses and finding those efficiencies. So some of those are formal agreements and some of those are informal agreements. I know that the CAOs group in the past have been working on this, but there's really not a lot of teeth to that as yet. So perhaps that's something as well that we can take some of those learnings and work on with other communities to try to find some of those efficiencies and ways of working better together. And then finally, and I asked the clerk to include information on this with my report, there was a session on cannabis and communities, and here the provincial representative shared that one of the first orders of business that they want municipalities to look at will be to decide whether to opt out of allowing recreational cannabis retail outlets in their city or town. The region did discuss this today at Public Health. It was clarified because I asked the question, is that on a regional side or is that on a local side? And they indicated that it was local. And so I know locally, for example, Niagara Falls has said that their council has said that they want to retail outlets for cannabis when it becomes available on, I think it's April 1st, 2019, and that communities can opt out. When you opt out, there's always the opportunity to opt back in. But if you were to opt in, there's no opportunity to opt out.
That's right.
You can't go back to Temperanceville, I guess is the issue. So I did include that, and we can have a brief discussion about that, but we also want to hear from colleagues that were there if there's anything else for them that they wanted to add about the AMO conference.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. I wanted to thank Council and the town for the opportunity to attend AMO. I've always enjoyed my opportunities to go there and be educated about the workings of the world, the municipal world. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things for the folks of Pelham and for this council. It was very interesting to attend a session with Nick Nanos, who reported to us a lot of data about a survey that they did. One of the things that struck me is that they pointed out that 9 cents out of every dollar is what municipalities get to deliver the services that they provide. And 60% of the population out there, when surveyed, think that the municipalities get all of it. 47% of the taxation on the people of the province of Ontario end up in the federal coffers, 44% end up in the provincial coffers, and municipalities who are closest to the people get 9%. The other interesting thing that came out of Mr. Nanos' survey was that the majority of the population would not cut services to freeze taxes. They recognize the importance of the services that are provided by the municipality. It would like those services maintained, even if it means increases in taxes. I also attended, Mr. Mayor, a session on municipal financial health. And I hadn't really thought about it in a great deal of detail, but it was pointed out in this conference that 280 provincial pieces of legislation impact on municipalities and we're bound under as we make our decisions. You know, and many in the community, when they look at some of the decisions that we make and the angst that we go through when we're trying to make decisions, don't realize that above us is 280 pieces of legislation to which we must comply. During the course of this session, I learned that in the current situation that we find ourselves in Ontario, we have the municipalities across Ontario have a $60 billion shortfall in infrastructure funding, and that it's increasing at a rate of 9.5% per year. So they estimated that we would have to increase either taxation or new source revenue by $4.8 billion each and every year over the next 10 years to try and keep pace with the rate at which infrastructure deficits are growing. And they pointed out that in 2015, a home that was taxed at $3,000 per year by 2025 will be at the minimum $6,989, just keeping pace with inflation and trying to fund this infrastructure deficit. Perhaps one of the most impactful sessions that I attended, Mr. Mayor, was with respect to the Land Use Planning Appeal Tribunal, the new tribunal to hear appeals about municipal planning decisions that will replace the Ontario Municipal Board. The interesting thing about it is that it is going to increase the workload both on staff in the planning department, on the clerk, for keeping much more detailed records, although our esteemed clerk does in fact keep excellent records, and we're ahead of the curve because we tape our council meetings. But the onus is going to fall back onto council. And the reports that will come from staff will include every single study that's done on a development. And we will need to be versed in those studies, because if the decision is appealed to this tribunal, the only record that goes to the tribunal is in fact the written record. There are no cross-examinations of experts and what have you. The onus for making an appropriate planning decision falls on the local council. And the only thing that's looked at is the record of those decisions and the discussion around the table and how it was decided and the studies that were looked at. If in fact it comes back with a recommendation from the tribunal that we need to reconsider, then we have the right to reconsider it or not. If it's or not, you then fall back into the traditional OMB appeal process in which experts go through the process. There's cross-examination. It becomes a de novo hearing again, similar to what it is now. So the onus on the upcoming council will be tremendous. It will be a lot more. We receive detailed reports from our staff now. We ain't seen nothing yet. and our staff is going to, the burden on our staff will be increased tremendously. The other interesting thing that came out of that, despite the fact that this new appeal tribunal has been operating for about a year now, they have not met their timelines in any single case. And so they're falling behind even in this new expedited system. So they don't know where it's going. They have appeals under the OMB, traditional OMB. They have appeals under the tribunal, the new tribunal, and nobody's meeting anybody's guidelines. So, Mr. Mayor, those are the things that I enjoyed and attended, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Papp, you're at the end. Is there anything at the end of the line, anything to add to what myself and Councillor Kersey have said?
Very quickly, two things that are very important to us as council, to all of you out in the community, those, especially those that are running for office. We're going to ask that they post the presentation on municipal fiscal health. I think you should read it very carefully, go through it. It is one of the best that I have ever seen that describes, in plain, simple language, what we have to deal with as far as revenues, operating expenses, budgets, and the challenges we're looking forward to, that we need to look at. Secondly, I'm going to ask that in light of what Mayor Augustine attended the issue, and I know it's come up publicly about opting in or opting out of cannabis operations. I know the province is still working on the retail side, whether we want to be in or out, but I wouldn't mind asking if staff could prepare a report on those options for us to consider as to what's the best route for us. Now, some municipalities, I can tell you, have already dealt with this. Not far from here, the city of Hamilton has already embarked on a staff report that was published the other day. It's excellent. It describes the pros and cons of getting into it and not getting into it. And yes, the land use planning was a critical piece, because what it means technically in a nutshell is that we, next term, and I've been around for quite a while, we are going to have to be we're going to have to be very well versed and very cognizant of those decisions we make to any applications that come here, because in the end, in one hand it's a dichotomy, because we've always been asking to have our own self-determination, that let us make those decisions on what should happen in development. Province says, okay, you can do that, but you're going to have to also be able to do it very comprehensively. And you better be, how can I say, 80-20, 80% right, or if not, 100% right. If not, you'll go through this tribunal, and they will render the decision, and you got to live with it. But I am asking that fiscal health, if you get a chance to, if we can download it to our site, or you can go to what they call the AMO site. It's called Municipal Fiscal Health. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I thank the opportunity of joining all of you at the conference. The final thing was interesting discussion with the new Honorable Steve Clark. Many of you don't know that as Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, small tidbit, he was the youngest mayor ever elected in the history of municipal government. He was 22 years old in Brockville. He's now, I won't tell you how old, and he's got no hair like me either. The bottom line is, he also mentioned that they are going to be very carefully reviewing, as the mayor suggested, how the regional governments work and what can be improved vis-a-vis what happens at the local level. So he's looking for input, and I know that we will be giving him our insights as to how, since we've been, this coming year, many of you will realize in the next year, we will be in regional government for over 50 years. And it's time, they've been through a lot of reports. Now is the time for us to ask ourselves, where do we want to take it? What do we think can be done to change? So I felt, I can say personally, and I think I can say for the mayor and the CEO, we found him to be very approachable. Yeah. We found him a lot different, even though there's been all kinds of speculation. And he seemed to be very open because, A, he understands local government. He's been in there. He's done it. And C, and B, he wants to make sure that not everything's a cookie-cutter approach that happened back in the 90s, that if there's going to be changes at the local government level, both upper and lower, that it be driven by us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks very much. So it's been moved. Are there any questions, actually, from councillors with the reports? So it's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved that Mayor Augustine's report dated September 4th, 2018 be received for information. I think the clerk has noted about the municipal fiscal health. Councillor, did you want to make that as a motion or amendment to this motion, that we direct staff to put together a
Can we
report
do it
on.
as, can we do it as
on
a
the
staff
pros and
direction?
cons?
Or we-
Mr. CEO,
How do you want to do
how do you
it?
think we should do that? Just ask for a staff report?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So, that's
Okay, great. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. I look forward to that future follow-up. Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to staff reports requiring action. There's a few tonight. First has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor Lane. Be it resolved, the council received the Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to file numbers AM0218 regarding 190 Canberra Road, and the council approved the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix E, amending the zoning of 190 Canberra Road from residential 1 R1 zone to a site-specific residential multiple RM1 285 zone. And the council approved the draft plan of condominium subject to the conditions attached hereto as Appendix F, and that the mayor or designate be authorized to sign the draft plan as approved 20 days after the notice of council's decision has been given as required by the Planning Act, provided no appeals of the decision has been logged. Questions or comments to the report? Ms. LaRocque is here for any questions. There was a question last council meeting, Ms. LaRocque, when council dealt with this item, and it was regarding moving from 7.5 to 8 meters, I believe, on a setback on the eastern side. Maybe you can just comment on, we did hear back from agents of the developer on that particular matter.
Certainly. At the last meeting, the report was deferred for staff to have conversation with the developer's agent and determine whether it was possible to increase the rear yard for those easterly units by 1 meter. So from 7.5 meters to 8.5 meters. Upon discussion with the consultant, they indicated that all of the unit sizes would have to be reduced fairly significantly, and that all of the units would have to be redesigned, and they've already done all the redesign, so they are not supportive of that change at this point.
Okay, and there's something in there about a fence as well.
A fence was also looked into. I understand that was part of the conversation at the last meeting, the possibility of having a higher fence than the typical 6-foot fence. The developer is also not supportive of that, and that's basically for people on both sides of the fence. A typical 6-foot fence should have the effect of mitigating impacts from privacy and construction, where an 8-foot fence might exacerbate some of the concerns about people feeling kind of holed into their yards and the impact of sun and wind and things like that not getting into their yards. And so a 6-foot fence is deemed to be adequate for this purpose.
And the developer also indicated that they would construct the fence, is that correct?
Correct. The developer will be constructing a 6-foot fence along the entire property out of the same material so that it looks consistent, and it will be within this property's boundaries.
Okay, thanks for clearing those matters up. Discussion by members of council on anything, those matters or anything? Councillor Pop?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. LaRocque, just when they refused to extend the 1 meter, so what in fact would be the impact on those townhouses? What, did he give you an idea of size? Would they go from 1,400 down to 1,000 or 1,200? What was? 150 square feet?
I think Councillor Pop's asking,
Yeah.
what are
What's
they
the impact?
currently designated at, and what would that impact be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Pap, it appears that the reduction would be approximately 150 square feet per
On each unit?
Yes.
How big are the units, though? I think your question.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Is it a 2,000 square foot unit, or is it a 1,000 square foot unit?
I don't have that information with me right now, unfortunately.
I believe, I think the agent's here, is he not?
14 or 16.
You want the answer, Councillor Pap?
If you don't mind, if
from
is the agent here?
Yeah, it's approximately about 1,400 square feet, between 12 and 14, depending on where the unit is.
Is what
Okay,
you're
so-
planning?
So just for those watching at
Yeah.
home, the agent indicated, agent of the developer indicated that the units are between 12 and 1,400 square feet under the current design, and they would have to be reduced by approximately 150 square feet under that proposal that was put forward at our last meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Ms. LaRocque, I did wonder about the side yard setbacks. As council did discuss this last meeting and the report came back to us, I note on one of the pages here, I'm trying to find it, there's a chart about the setbacks that would be required. In some cases, the proposal is meeting that setback, minimum side yard setback. I believe it's page 11, is that correct?
Page 11, yeah.
Under our current standard residential multiple one zone, if I'm reading this correctly, it's supposed to be no less than 4.5 meters, except where the rear of the building faces the side yard, which I believe is supposed to be 7.5 meters. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct.
And they're requesting a change to that. So they're having the 7.5 where the rear of the building faces the side yard on the east side. That's the number we were talking about. But where's the other? They're having other ones there, 3.78, 1.5, and 6.
Mr. Mayor, the setback of 3.78 meters on the east side is for the most easterly unit. I think it's unit 11 on the plan. Unit 10. And so that setback is actually from the side of that unit to the easterly lot line. And the setback of 1.5 meters on the west side is from the side of the southerly unit on the west side to the west lot line.
Southerly unit on the west side to the west lot line. So I believe the owner, does the owner own that unit?
Own the abutting
Own the-
property on the
yes,
west
yeah.
side? No.
Okay. What's the compelling reason for them to reduce those from, normally it would be 4.5, is that correct?
Correct.
So what's the compelling reason, I was trying to find that in the report, for which the developer indicated that they should reduce it from the 4.5 to less than that, 3.78 and 1.5?
I believe it to be developer preference in terms of layout of the site, in terms of staff review and impacts as a result of that reduced side yard. We don't anticipate any.
Okay. I didn't know if council wanted to consider that and say, you know what, we've heard some concerns from neighbors. Do we want to, what appendix is that? But do we want to say, you know what, what's the compelling reason for reducing the side yard, the setbacks? So anyways, I'll leave that to council if council wants to discuss that. The other question I had, and I think Councillor Kersey, and when you spoke about the LPAT or whatever it's called, you outlined that council has to look at everything and consider it all. And I wondered, Ms. LaRocque, is that why the report seems to have additional information in it from reports that we may have seen a year ago? So for example, the report talks about the need for the province's goal of affordable housing, and then it responds back, the report says, and this is not affordable housing, or there's no affordable housing here.
The report indeed does address the new requirements for LPAT. That largely relates to, there are new tests that we need to include in the report. Is it consistent with provincial policy, and does it conform to the town's official plan? And so all of those things are included in here. The policy analysis and citing of all of the policies is probably consistent with what you would have seen before. This report is lengthy also because there were so many comments received, and we made an effort to address all of those.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking for a map. Which one's the appendix is the map? Maybe it's D. Anyways, I don't know if council colleagues have any comments on want to comment, want to weigh in on the side yard setback? Nobody? Councilor Rippiack?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure that I'm going to comment necessarily on the side yard per se. I think the report we've received from staff is a good one. I'm generally supportive. I think that the very complete description of the issues that neighbors had were well addressed. What was particularly meaningful for me was that although this is a different kind of housing than may have been contemplated by the original zoning, the number of built structures is essentially the same. It would be located in essentially the same areas. So there's not a big difference between what would have been without going to a condominium and what would have been allowed. So given that there seems to be no particular issue identified with that side yard, I'm not sure what comment to make with regard to that. I'm happy with the staff report. I'm going to support it.
Okay,
Support
thank
the
you.
recommendation with it.
Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can't find them.
Well, firstly, let me address since I raised the issue about the extra meter.
Yeah, please.
It was a request to the developer to see if he would give some consideration to the neighbors and the concerns that were expressed by the neighbors. Unfortunately, we are in a position where we cannot compel the developer to add that 1 meter, and he's taken his position. They are not asking for a variance in this area, and so I think council colleagues, our hands are tied in that particular area. The variance on the west side, as far as the side yard, from 4.5 to 3.78 is a relatively minor variance and would fly through any committee of adjustment without much thought.
Okay.
And typically, side yards are not amenity spaces and would be used for nothing more than cutting the lawn, I would say, probably at 3.78 meters. So the people that abut onto that side yard on 3.78 are probably in as good a position as they can be. With respect to the 1.75 on the west side, seems to me that the property that it abuts on, the house, the single-family home that is there, is really positioned almost central in this relatively large piece of property. So in fact, if one looks at the impact of that side yard on the existing dwelling, it seems to me that there's sufficient buffering and separation from the new development. So I, together with Councillor Ribbiak, think that our report that we have before us is quite thorough. I think for us to take the position that we would not support this would put us in a very untenable situation in that if it were appealed to the new tribunal, we would have to hire an outside third party to represent council's position, which I'm not sure that we can articulate in a planning sense. So I find it difficult not to support the report. I hear the concerns of the neighbors. It will be somewhat impactful on them, but I'm trusting that with good design, with good site plan control, the fact that there will be a 6-foot closed board fence surrounding the site, and hopefully some plantings that will over time provide adequate buffering. The fact that the developer will not build an 8-foot does not preclude the neighbors, if they chose, to apply to the town for a variance of the fence height. And so I think that avenue is still open to those that feel that the impact has hurt their privacy to come back to us and ask if they could add an 8-foot fence. And for us to give due consideration to it at that point in time. So, you know, I think if they had come in with under the normal bylaw, in fact, it's been demonstrated they would in fact have a higher density than what is being proposed here. If they had come in with a single family, it's a large enough lot that they could build a monster home there that would probably have more impact on the neighbors' privacy than these 1.5/2-story dwelling. So I will be supportive of it with some reluctance. I had hoped that the developer would be a little more flexible with respect to the setback on the abutting properties, but we'll look to the site plan for that it'll be well done and the buffering will be provided, that the drainage concerns of the neighbors will be sufficiently well addressed by the engineers involved. And I look to staff for ensuring that that happens. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Councillor. Any others? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question about the presentation that was just made, and through you to staff. I understood that the fence is going to be built on the property, which is 190?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Durley, you're correct. It will be within this property.
So I would think that there may be a challenge if someone wanted to raise that by 2 feet, other than the people that own this. And, you know, I'm thinking, would this become a challenge in the future? Like it's indicated that it, you know, go for a minor variance to add 2 feet to a fence, but if that fence is not on your property, would this be a bigger challenge than it appears?
They would have to make an application to increase the fence height on their own property.
But this won't be on their own property, so.
Correct, it would
So
be
the people
a
affected on
separate
the
fence.
outside would not have an opportunity to do that. So, you know, therein lies a challenge. So there certainly would have to be some negotiating with the owner of the property on 190 then. But anyway, just as a point of interest in that, and just thinking that it may not be as easy as it appears. So.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Any others? I do appreciate the feedback from council in terms of the response. I know that staff have included a lot of things into the report, but I think Councillor Kersey, your suggestion that if this were to have gone to Committee of Adjustment, this is something that often they approve. So maybe in future, if there's something in the reports about sort of what's the variance on the side yard setback piece that I spoke about, and then Council Kersey sort of refuted. And so I do appreciate that. Maybe there can be further comment on that in future reports. And we did, I believe, also see in that one of the questions that a few of us were asking is the density of the site, and that was actually lower than what they could do under normal circumstances. So that was a case brought forward by the neighbors as well. So if we're ready, are we ready for calling the question?
Yes, sir.
All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now we move to report 1122, moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the council receives the Community Planning and Development Report for information as pertains to file number AM0918 regarding blocks 45, 46, and 47, Plan 59M456 Saffron Meadows Phase 1 subdivision. Council approved the bylaw amendment attached, removing the holding provision from those blocks. Comments or questions? Kind of a standard approach once they are prepared and ready to go. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Lane. Be it resolved that Council receives the Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to the request to designate 808 Canberra Road, Fenwick United Church, Manse, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And the council proceed with designating the property in accordance with Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act by serving notice of intention to designate on the owner, the Ontario Heritage Trust, and giving of public notice. I note that Ms. Phillips is here. She appealed to council in the beginning of June, so thanks very much. Questions or comments to the report? Very pleased that in this case the owner wants to preserve this landmark building, and you went through the report as you presented how historic it is and how important it is to the community, and how the community embraced this house, this manse, when it was first built, and how it's been there for many, many years. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. So we look forward to that designation going through, and no doubt staff will be working with you in terms of what that means to the site as well. So thank you very much for raising it. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor King, second by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, the council receive report 1124 regarding the lifting of the 1-foot reserve in the River Estates subdivision. For information, the council adopts the bylaw to lift the 1-foot reserve in the River Estates subdivision known as Block 135, Plan 59M 434. King, Durley. Clerk's looking over my shoulder. Questions or comments? It actually will allow folks to use the roadway. I'll have a question under Public Works and when the roadway for the other part is going to be paved. We'll look forward to that. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do not read it first, second, third time, and do pass the same, and that the mayor and clerk be hereby authorized to sign and seal the following bylaws. Bylaw 4031, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 1136 as amended for lands located on the south side of Canberra Road, municipally known as 190 Canberra Road, legally described as part of Lot 3, Concession 8 in the town of Pelham, from residential 1 zone to a site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1285 zone. Bylaw 4037, being a bylaw to accept 1-foot road, 1-foot reserve, being Block 135, Plan 59M 434, pursuant to the subdivision agreement for River Estates. Bylaw 4038, being a bylaw to remove the holding provision executed by bylaw number 3810 for the lands located on the south side of Acadia Road in Saffron Phase 1 subdivision, legally described as Block 45, 46, 47 on Plan 59M456. Questions, comments? Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, if you don't mind. Bylaw 4037 being a bylaw to accept a 1-foot reserve, being Block 135, et cetera. The language is being a bylaw to accept a 1-foot reserve. The report that we just discussed a moment ago has different language, and I just want to be sure that we're not
Stepping on our feet?
Yeah, stepping on our feet, as it were. This one is to lift a 1-foot reserve. So to accept a 1-foot reserve versus lifting a 1-foot reserve, are they the same thing?
Madam Clerk?
Through your
Oh, Ms.
to
Laroque.
Councillor Ribbiak. Yes, they are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question has been answered. I appreciate that very much.
Okay, thank you. Danced around that well. Going to call the question. All those in favor?
Easy answer.
Any opposed? I'm glad you didn't use your foot, Counselor. The motion is carried. Thank you.
I am too.
Computer just quit on me. Councilors, we have some motions. Do the councilors want me to read the motions, or do you, the mover and the seconder, the movers of the motion, do you want to read the motion?
Whatever you prefer.
Councilor Gurley?
I'd like to read mine, Mr. Mayor, because I have a brief alteration as to what was actually presented at one of the further resolved. So if I could do that, that's
Okay.
fine. And
Councilor Kersey, you want to read your?
Sure, I'll read
the
mine.
motion? Please do. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present this under my signature, seconded by Councillor Durley. Whereas the town of Pelham has a new community center which has facilities previously unavailable to it, and whereas the council and staff of the town of Pelham wish to operate the center at the highest possible level of efficiency and service, and whereas council and staff recognize that the new Meridian Community Center offers opportunities not previously available to them, and whereas council and staff recognize that community members offer much expertise, be it resolved that a hospitality advisory committee be established, and be it further resolved that staff be directed to bring forward to council's next regularly scheduled meeting a terms of reference for said committee, And be it further resolved that this committee be charged with the responsibility to review the operations of the hospitality aspect of the Meridian Community Center and to make recommendations to council and staff with respect to operations of the hospitality functions of the Meridian Community Center, including catering, alcohol sales, fees, etc. And be it further resolved that the said committee to be comprised of experts in the field of hospitality, a member of staff as a resource, and a member of council ex officio. And be it further resolved that the minutes of the committee be presented to council on a monthly basis, and be it further resolved that the committee formally report to council on at least a quarterly basis.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Do you want to proceed? And then I'll turn to Councillor Durley as a seconder as well. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When this motion is coupled with the motion that is to follow by my colleague, it speaks to the general operations and the efficiency of the community center. I am not bringing into question the expertise that our staff brings to bear with respect to operations of the arenas and the basketball courts and, you know, the general functioning of the building. That's not at question at all. What I am hoping to effect with this particular motion is to tap the expertise that's within our community to advise us with respect to how we should run the catering aspect, how we should run the alcohol sales, how we should manage our licensing of the building, how we should interface with groups that are looking to rent our facilities. As an example, do we offer a turnkey operation for someone who wants to hold a wedding so that we can offer them 3 previously reviewed caterers, offer them a turnkey with respect to alcohol sales, et cetera, et cetera. I think those questions are out there. I think it's imperative on us to look into it and to explore all the opportunities that are available. And I think of no better way of doing that than invoking our use of an advisory committee such that we've used in the past. We've heard about the wonderful experience we've had with the oversight committee and how efficient and effective they were. I think that we'll see the same experience here, Mr. Mayor. So that's why I brought forward this particular motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seconder of this motion, I fully agree with everything that was previously stated. Having organized 2 weddings in the past for 2 daughters, when you have a facility and you have meals to provide and so on and so forth, it's nice to go to the provider of that facility and say, this is what I need and it's taken care of for me, rather than to have to try and do this yourself. So in fact, if I was to be wanting to rent the main activity room in the community center, I would expect that I would have the opportunity to have a caterer available and have all of the stuff necessary for that, so that I can focus my attention on the bride and the groom and these type of things. So I fully agree that assistance in this from experts will certainly help our staff in order to make the most efficient use of the facility. And this, of course, is my goal, is to make it as efficient as possible and as sustainable as possible and as easy to use by the public as possible. So I think this motion will go a long way to see that all of these good things happen. So I fully support this, and I'm very pleased to have seconded this motion.
All right, thank you very much. Other members to the motion? Councillor Rybak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. The first of these has to do with the nature of the advisory committee. Is it anticipated that this is an advisory committee that will be put together for a single response, a recommendation, or is it the anticipation of Councillor Kersey and Councillor Durley that this will be an ongoing, continuing committee providing continuous advice?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My view at this point in time it would be an ongoing committee, at least for a term of council. If we find that, or the new council finds that their work is completed and they receive such a report from the advisory committee, it could be disbanded at any time. But typically our advisory committees are set up for either a specific project or a term of council. So my view was that it would be for a term of council. at the opening anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I asked the question is that the motion seems to suggest that the purpose is to come up with a recommendation, and that suggested a single recommendation, but it sounds like it's an effort to ensure that a continuous series of recommendations is coming forward with respect to this activity. I just wanted to clarify that. The second is and perhaps Councillor Kersey addressed it, but maybe he can clarify this for me. We're asking for an advisory committee to develop a recommendation. Our normal process is to ask for staff, of course, to present us with a recommendation based on studies and expertise that they've gone out to look for. So I guess my question is why this way this time with regard to getting a recommendation? Is it because of the continuous nature of?
Well, I think the approach that I'm taking here is, my presumption is that staff has already taken some steps in this, have started to look at these aspects of it, and that by interfacing with experts from the community in the hospitality industry, they would be able to have those decisions or thought processes reviewed by experts in the community or that are in the hospitality field. So it's not dissimilar to the way we've done it in the past, where staff has brought forward a schematic about, or we received a report, think about the design for the community center, and we decided that, hey, we need to take a look at this. We've seen some of this information out here, but maybe we're not capturing all of it. So that's the idea, that I've made the presumption that staff have taken some looks at it and are operating at the present time under a certain decision, having made certain decisions. What I'm asking for is that we bring in expertise to look at that one aspect of the operations of the community center to optimize it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, just one line. So for clarity, what we're talking about is essentially going to be a staff report that has been informed by the input of an advisory committee, or are we looking for a report from the advisory committee separate from staff? With staff obviously being a resource, but other than that.
I think we'd be looking for a report from the committee as the advisory committee, but staff may in fact bring an alternate report. And you may have a discussion around this table. Staff is saying one thing and the advisory committee, based on their expertise, may say something else. In the past, it hasn't worked out that way. Typically, staff is supportive of the advisory committee's report before it even gets to the council table. They would have those discussions in that small group between staff and expertise.
I would answer it differently, Councillor, and I think
Maybe I'm not.
So we'll see what the terms of reference are, and we can have a bigger debate there. But this is an advisory committee, and just like other advisory committees, it's not replacing staff.
No.
It's not replacing necessarily their recommendations, but it's trying to get the expertise from the community into the hospitality operations. I think back to the Thursday night supper market committee. Councillor Papp served on that committee. And Councillor Kersey, thank you for reminding me. It got the thing going. They met the first year. There were concerns in the community. They got things ironed out. Came back the second year, it's like, we don't need to meet anymore because it's all working, right?
Yep.
So that may be the case in this situation. It might be a case where they're going to say, well, you know what, it's not going to be quarterly after the first bunch of quarters. It's going to be annually after that, and then it won't be, and then something will happen. It'll call back, set up as a committee. So I think if there's some flexibility there in the terms of reference, but they are an advisory committee to council, but also to staff. If we're trying to get experts from the community in here to make this run as on the hospitality side. So I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It does. My questions were for clarity. I'm not opposed to an advisory committee. I'm never opposed to an advisory committee that could be of assistance. I just wanted to be sure of what it was that we were asking for, and that we were clear in our own minds what kind of a report we expect and how we expect it. But I think that a discussion of the terms of reference will be able to revisit that whole question and deal with it then. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just to build upon what has probably already been said before, I know of at least one group that wished to hold an event at the community center, and when asked for, some food and that stuff to be provided, it was a big challenge to staff at that particular time, and I think this motion will go a long way to remove that challenge. In fact, to make available these things at an easy thing. So when I come in, I want to have a meeting and I want to have a lunch at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It can be provided rather than to have challenges in order to do that. And I think the expertise from the hospitality sector in our community will certainly give staff the ability to put these packages together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Councillor Pop?
Quickly, I think Councillor Durley answered. I'm looking for the terms of reference, and I want a clearer definition of hospitality, because I see there a hospitality function of the center, there's a recreational part of the center, and yes, I'm very familiar. There are places where you go to one body, that person handles all of the aspects that you were talking about, whether it's a wedding or stag and all that. So if that is there as a strategic advisor to the staff to help them build those skills and get whatever resources that I'm looking forward to it, I'm in favor of it. I think it's something that we can, but if it reaches, like you say, the point of what Councillor Kerr said, where there is dedicated staff, they have the capability, and I'm looking from the customer side, when they come in, as Councillor Derry said, I want to use the center for da-da-da-da-da. This is who you go to, this is how it's done. Is that it, basically in a nutshell? So I look forward to that discussion with the terms. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We look forward to that terms of reference at our next meeting. Thank you. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And when you get to the part that you're changing, if you could kind of keep it slow for the clerk.
I most certainly will.
And others, thanks.
The motion will read, notwithstanding the fact that each major user group in the town of Pelham Meridian Community Center has signed an agreement for the use of this community center, and whereas each major user group is entitled to unfettered operation of its own programs, and whereas from time to time there is a possibility that special requirements may be necessary to accommodate special events that may be hosted by one or more of these user groups, and whereas flexibility in scheduling, communication, and cooperation among major user groups will go a long way to alleviate challenges which may arise during special events and/or circumstances. And whereas a committee made up of representatives of members of the major user groups is the most convenient means by which such challenges can be addressed, be it resolved that major user groups of the town of Pelham Meridian Community Center Committee be established, and be it further resolved that one member of each major user group be appointed to serve on this committee to represent each group. Here is where the change is. And be it further resolved that a staff member be appointed to chair this meeting. Just remove, I had reference to a particular committee of, or department of, and I understand the way the structure is of the facilities committee, that could be a limiting factor. So in fact, that member of staff can be from any member connected with the community center. And be it further resolved that a member of town council be appointed to sit on this committee ex officio. And be it further resolved that a specific terms of reference be established to govern the activities conducted by this committee. Just the rationale behind this is having been involved in organizing many events over my short life, or sometimes a long life, I guess. But the challenges do come up. In fact, there will be times where the basketball courts will need more time. The ice time will be more necessary. There will be conflicting events that are happening. So, in fact, it could be a give and take where somebody may have extra ice time that can offer it to another group, or may have extra court time that they may offer another group, and the fact that they can sit together and iron these things out to say, okay, around playoff time I'm going to have short terms of reference because the organizing group, the Ontario Basketball Association or Ontario Minor Hockey Association or so on, gives me 8 days to do 9 games, which is unreasonable, but things happen like this where you really have to stretch in order to make things work. So in order to see this will I think have everybody communicating well and everybody to understand each other's needs. The motion that we previously discussed deals with revenues and so on. This doesn't really deal with the revenues, it deals with the effective and efficient operation of the actual scheduling of events. So they are two separate things. However, this, I think, will go a long way in order to keep the cooperation there and say that, okay, all of you major user groups are all equal. Nobody's more equal than anybody else. This is what you need to do to work together, and I think that will go a long way to, to help smooth things out and make things, the operation of this community center much more efficient. And that's it in a nutshell, in a big nutshell.
Thanks very much, Councillor Durley. Councillor Kersey as the seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, I concur with everything my colleague has said and happy to support this. I believe communication is the key. This is a brand-new facility. It has many more users encased in one particular facility. To be able to sit down across the table and discuss the challenges and the needs and the operations with staff and with each other will go a long way to have a happy place. And that happy place makes for an efficient place. So I'm pleased to support this. It will put an end to one user group chirping in the ear of another user group, and that group chirps in the ear of another user group, and pretty soon you got a war going on and there's no war to be had. So I'm glad to see Councillor Durley bring this forward. I look forward to it being enacted and getting it up and operational. I would like to propose one friendly amendment, and that is that I think it's imperative that we get this thing up and operational as soon as we can. So I'd like to suggest that, similar to my motion, that the terms of reference be brought forward at our next regular scheduled meeting, if at all possible.
Okay.
I have no problem with that, if at all possible.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. It says specific terms of reference be established to govern the activities. The way it's written doesn't even have to come to council. So you want this,
And brought to council
Yeah.
at our next meeting, if possible. That's fine with me, yes, by all means.
okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Pop?
Well, very quickly, I'll look forward to the terms of reference. What I'm hearing too is besides communication, because I also have been involved in things like this, where decisions have to be made, right, Councillor Durley?
Absolutely.
Because it's not just a matter of sitting around nodding your heads. Sometimes the decision point has to be made. Look, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to give something up. We're going to do that, right? So there's mutual understanding of how the decision affects and everybody walks around understanding that that's the way to schedule. That's what I'd like to see. Kudos to both of you, because I know if it's not done that way, then it just creates more chaos.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councillor Lane, did you have
Yes,
something?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supportive of this as long as it eliminates the chirping.
It'll help to control the parking.
Thank you. Any others? I think it's a good move, and I think, you think of something, the request we had, for instance, with the Kinsmen.
Right.
One group comes in and says, hey, this is a great idea, this will work for us, but what are the consequences for other groups? And so this would be it wouldn't necessarily come to council, it would go to this group. The group would say, well, you know what, we can make that happen, but we gotta do this, we gotta do this, we gotta do this. Or, we can't really make it happen on that weekend, but is there any way we can do it the weekend after, or change this hour, or do that? So those negotiations will kind of occur at this committee, and the chirping will end, and it will all be sunshine and rainbows, right? So there you go, happy birds. So I'm gonna call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried, and we look forward to those terms of reference coming forward to us at our next meeting. Thank you, colleagues. I'm missing a confirming bylaw. Here it is. Sorry. Two more motions for this meeting. One is moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Lane. Be it resolved, the following bylaw be read a first, second, third time and passed, being bylaw 4039, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council on the 4th day of September 2018. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, this regular meeting of council be adjourned until our next regular meeting scheduled for September 17th, 2018 at 6:30. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Take a brief, 5-minute break before we start committee. Thank you.